The apartment was too quiet. Not the kind of peaceful quiet after a long day, this was the hollow kind. The kind that wraps around your ribs and squeezes when you're trying not to care. I sat on the edge of the worn-out couch, watching the wax from a single candle melt onto a slice of cake I had bought myself. The wine bottle next to it was still unopened. I didn't expect much. But nothing? That stung. The old clock above the kitchen ticked louder than it should have. I kept glancing at my phone like it might do something different if I looked hard enough. But no notifications. No calls. Just the same stale screen. I'd texted everyone 3 days ago. Nothing dramatic, just a simple, "Hey, I'll be home Friday if you guys are free." No big plans. Just dinner. Mom had left it on read. My brother replied with a thumbs up emoji. My sister didn't respond at all. And yet, today, my birthday, my brother posted a photo of his new grill. Mom had uploaded pictures from brunch with her church group. My sister was live on Instagram, laughing over margaritas with coworkers. Not one of them said a word to me. A part of me wanted to scroll past it all. But I didn't. I let myself sit with it. Let myself remember the times I showed up when they needed me. When I gave up my college fund so Mom could afford her surgery. When I worked 2 jobs to help cover my sister's rent. When I stayed home to care for Dad during his stroke recovery while they went on with their lives. Maybe I was only useful when they needed something. I looked at the flickering candle again. Lit it myself. No singing, no awkward off-key notes. Just silence and a whisper of smoke. And still, a part of me had hoped. I remembered being 9 years old, hoping for a new bike like my brother just got. Instead, I unwrapped a regifted Barbie from a neighbor, still in a crumpled bag. Mom smiled and said, "You're the strong one, you'll understand." Back then, I swallowed it down. Strong doesn't mean I don't feel. Tonight, the same song that played from my childhood birthday cassette echoed from my phone's playlist. I didn't realize I'd picked it until halfway through the chorus. Muscle memory, maybe. Or maybe a part of me still clung to something soft, something I hadn't grown out of. The sun had gone down without fanfare. The clouds outside were the same gray they'd been all day, like the sky couldn't make up its mind. I sat there, scrolling through my phone again. No birthday wishes. No missed calls. But plenty of updates, a cousin's engagement party, friends at a concert, coworkers clinking glasses at a happy hour I wasn't invited to. I felt a weight settle in my chest, not sharp, not sudden. Just there. Familiar. Too familiar. Why do I always make excuses for them? I'd tell myself they're busy. That they meant to call. That maybe I should have reminded them. But the truth was simpler than that. They didn't forget. They just didn't care enough to remember. Something in me began to shift, quietly but permanently. Out of habit, I tapped Mom's contact. The phone rang once, then straight to voicemail. I didn't bother leaving a message. I tried my sister next, voicemail again. I typed out a text, something short, "Guess you're busy." Just wanted to say hi. I stared at it for a moment. Then deleted it. I wasn't going to chase. Not this time. Instead, I stood, walked to the kitchen, and cut myself a slice of the cake. I poured the wine. It tasted cheap, sour on my tongue, but I swallowed anyway. Happy birthday to me. I carried the plate and glass to the couch, sat down, and stared at the candle again. It flickered, fighting a non-existent breeze. I raised my glass slightly, just enough to make it feel like a toast. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I opened Netflix and searched for a documentary I'd saved weeks ago, something about setting boundaries. It felt fitting now. The narrator's voice filled the space as I leaned back and wrapped a blanket around myself. For the first time in a long while, I whispered the words I never let myself say. I deserve better. That wasn't bitterness. That was truth. And as I drifted to sleep with the candle still glowing on the table beside me, a quiet sense of clarity settled in. I didn't know then that the worst would come only a few days later. 2 days after my birthday, I thought I had numbed myself to disappointment. I kept moving through small routines, brewing coffee, folding laundry, as if I could scrub away the ache beneath my ribs. But pain has a way of finding the weak spot. I was standing in the kitchen when it hit, a sudden, tearing pressure deep inside me. My vision blurred. The mug slipped from my hand, shattering. I reached for the counter, but everything spun. The floor rushed up, and then, nothing. When I woke, it wasn't to familiar voices. It was to the whistle of oxygen and the cold blue glow of hospital lights. A nurse was adjusting something near my bed. "You're at St. Luke's," she said, as if I needed orientation to reality. Your neighbor heard a loud noise and called for help. My mouth was dry. My limbs felt heavy. I glanced at the empty windowsill, no flowers, no cards. Just machines that blinked and beeped. The doctor came in later and explained that I'd had a severe internal infection, something that had likely been building for weeks. If you'd waited any longer, he said, this could have gone differently. I nodded, but I didn't ask for details. I already knew what he meant. This wasn't just physical. This was rot, quiet, neglected, growing in the dark. My phone lay on the tray beside the bed. Instinctively, I reached for it. No missed calls. No messages. No, "Are you okay?" It was almost impressive how thoroughly they could erase me. Later, during recovery, I opened social media, mostly out of habit, half expecting to see something that might contradict the truth I already knew. There they were. My brother in a suit, arm around my sister, grinning at a cousin's engagement party out in Dallas. Mom behind them, holding a champagne flute. The caption read, "Family first, always." I stared at that sentence until it blurred. I could still hear Mom's voice from years ago, "You know we'll drop everything if anything serious happens." Funny how easily promises disappear when there's no audience. They weren't too busy. They weren't unreachable. They were celebrating, in sequins and smiles, while I lay unconscious, a wristband stamped with the date and time I arrived. I set the phone down and closed my eyes. I could almost hear the excuses forming, ready to crawl back in. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe they thought I was fine. But truth has a different temperature. It doesn't soothe. It scorches. I thought about texting them, something simple, something that would make them feel just an ounce of what I felt. But I couldn't make myself write the words. I refused to beg for attention from people who had made apathy a habit. So I didn't send anything. I silenced the phone and placed it face down. When people stay gone long enough, you start inventing reasons that hurt less. That afternoon, a nurse named Rosa checked my IV. She moved quietly, eyes gentle, hands steady. She noticed the untouched chair in the corner. "Your family live far?" she asked softly. "They're just tied up with work," I said. She didn't argue, but her silence was louder than pity. She told me her daughter lived in New York, hadn't visited in 2 years. "She sends postcards," she said, forcing a smile. "Sometimes a photograph." But I keep a place for her at my table anyway. She didn't say it, but I heard what she meant. Distance is one thing. Choosing not to come is another. That night, I lay awake, the steady drip of the tapping time. The ceiling above me was blank, like it was daring me to speak the truth I'd been swallowing for years. Who am I when no one is watching? Who am I when no one is coming? I thought about things I used to want: law school, writing, leaving this city for someplace where my name wasn't an afterthought. Before I was the caretaker. Before I learned to make myself small. And somewhere in that silence, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Desire. Not for them. For myself. I reached for my phone, opened the Notes app, and typed. They don't check. They don't care. I won't remind them again. 3 lines. No poetry. Just truth. A few mornings later, they cleared me for discharge. No one came to pick me up. I paid for a cab, slid into the back seat, and watched the hospital shrink in the rearview mirror. The driver didn't speak. I didn't either. Back home, the air felt heavier. I walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and saw it, the cake, half-eaten, candles still crooked. I took it out, dumped it in the trash without hesitation. That part of me was done. It wasn't the fall that hurt me. It wasn't the hospital. It was this, knowing I could disappear completely, and they would still raise a glass somewhere and call it family. As I set my keys down, my phone lit up. One voicemail. From my mother. Dated 2 days ago. For a moment, I let myself hope. I pressed play. The email subject line was short, 6 words, but it hit like a gut punch. Title deed has been transferred successfully. I blinked. Sat up. Opened it again. There was no introduction, no greeting. Just a sterile notice from a real estate transaction platform I hadn't used in years. I rubbed my temple, heart beginning to pick up speed. Some mistake. A phishing scam, maybe. I pulled up the Harris County Public Records website. Typed in my address. Hit search. Logan's name. Clear as day. Next to mine? No. Replacing mine. It felt like someone had knocked the air out of me. My name wasn't on the deed anymore. Not even as co-owner. He was listed as the sole owner. I stared at the screen, mind racing. The only thing I could think of: weeks ago, I'd signed something during a visit to my parents. They said it was for a property inspection, something routine about the zoning. I didn't read every line. It was handed to me while I was still half distracted, sipping coffee. I trusted them. Thought it was nothing. Turns out, it was everything. By the time I hit call on the title company, my hands were shaking. The woman who picked up sounded cheerful, oblivious. I asked about the deed transfer. She confirmed, yes, the transaction went through last week. All signatures are verified. I never signed anything transferring ownership, I said, voice low, steady. She hesitated. Well, we have a document with your name on it. I want to see it. I'm afraid we can't release that without a subpoena. It's my signature. I understand, ma'am. But privacy laws. I hung up before she could finish. The survey. That damned paper I didn't read. The box I initialed. It was all a lie dressed up in paperwork. They knew what they were doing. And I let them. The flashback came quickly, without grace. I was in my parents' dining room, still reeling from a tense conversation with Mom. Logan slid a folder across the table. "It's just zoning stuff for that south wall," he said casually. "We're adding solar panels or something." I didn't even sit down. Just flipped, skimmed, signed. God, I didn't even ask for a copy. It wasn't carelessness. It was habit. A lifetime of assuming their words had my interest in mind. The way they spoke with that same smile, the same family tone. And I had believed them. No, worse. I had wanted to believe. I stood in my kitchen now, arms folded, staring at the old paint sample board leaning against the counter. This house was mine. Every detail. Every choice. And now, legally, it belonged to someone who hadn't lifted a damn finger for it. The anger was slow but hot. It climbed up my chest like a burn. I could have screamed. I could have called them. But I didn't. Because deep down, I already knew the answer. They planned this. I turned the TV on to distract myself. A local news ticker scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Logan Fairchild expands property portfolio, claims luxury estate in Spring Branch. And just like that, the anger cooled into something heavier. Determination. I grabbed my phone and called Simone. She picked up on the second ring. "What happened?" she asked, sensing the tremor in my voice. "They took the house." She didn't ask who. She knew. "Start gathering," she said. "Receipts. Drafts. Emails. Whatever you've got. And get someone to look at those signatures. Don't let them pretend you don't exist. Can you help me find someone who specializes in handwriting verification?" "Already texting you a name," she said. "But don't confront them yet. Let them think you're still quiet." "Simone. Thank you. Delphi, if you stay quiet, they win." Her voice steadied me. I spent the next 3 hours digging through folders. Email chains with the architect. Photos of the lot before foundation. Even a napkin sketch from 3 years ago when Logan laughed at my dream of a reading nook. I put everything in a binder. The next morning, I walked into a small law office tucked behind a dentist's clinic. The kind of place where everything smelled like old carpet and quiet justice. The lawyer, Mr. Hendricks, was soft-spoken but sharp. He listened. Asked the right questions. Walked me through something called false conveyance and rights of rescission. Told me I wasn't crazy. Told me this was common, and that didn't make it any less wrong. Before I left, I signed a letter. Certified. Mailed out. It was addressed to Logan. To my parents. Demand to void the transfer. Immediate return of ownership or legal action would follow. That night, back home, I poured tea and sat on the couch, scrolling. Logan had just posted a photo. My house in the background. Him on the porch, arms crossed like a king surveying new land. Caption, "Can't wait to host the holidays in the new crib." I set my phone down. I drafted my next letter with his smirk still frozen on the screen. I drove into Franklin that morning feeling like I was walking into someone else's memory. The house loomed ahead, grand and familiar, wrapped in early sunlight. The lawn was manicured, not with love, but with image, layers of control hiding every chipped paint and past fracture. As I stepped into the dining room, I felt stairs land like heavy stones. The long table stood ready, lace runner, polished silverware, floral arrangement. They were staging this. Logan rose from the head of the table. He raised his glass. We're here to celebrate the family we built. He said we, as though I'd drawn the plans, signed the loans, walked this path beside him. The room nodded, smiled. It crushed me deeper than silence ever could. He spoke of our new home, framing it like a shared triumph. I sat frozen, tasting betrayal. Those words, our new home, had no place in my narrative. They turned me into a ghost in my own story. Elias caught my eye across the table, confusion danced there, or maybe guilt. I thought, they don't need to hear me speak. They only need to write me out. Later, mid-lunch, Elias touched his wine glass. He whispered, so softly I wasn't sure I heard, "That wasn't true, is it?" My heart twisted. I forced steadiness. I nodded. He asked about the survey I signed. I swallowed. I said nothing. His gaze flicked between me and Logan. I sensed the fault line cracking. When Logan finished, I stood slowly. My voice was calm but steady. "What you just said, it wasn't true." Gasps shook the air. I felt their surprise, their distance. I laid down sketches, emails, notes with my name scribbled, evidence not of hatred, but of invasion. Mom's face tightened. She tried, we meant well. But I cut her off, meaning well doesn't erase wrongdoing. His face reddened. He accused me of embarrassment, of causing a scene. Her lips formed words I couldn't hear. They murmured, "Is this really the time?" Elias rose too, his expression torn. I didn't stay to argue. I pressed past them, into the garden. Outside, I inhaled hard air. I watched them through glass doors, arguing over me like I was property. It struck me then, the fight they wage is not against me. It's over who gets to use me. I checked my phone. There it was, a photo someone posted, me walking away, the luncheon table half empty behind me, Logan's hand raised in salute. Caption, family tensions flare over mansion dispute. I let the screen dim in my hand. The public sees what they want to see now. This fight just became public. The message came in right after breakfast. Short. I'm sorry. I didn't know you were so hurt. It was from Loretta. I stared at the words. Not out of shock. Just nothingness. I waited a full minute before I deleted it without replying. There was nothing to say. Sorry at this stage wasn't an apology. It was a performance. And I'd spent too long in that theater already. People always said my silence was stubbornness. What they didn't understand was, it's the only thing no one could twist. I remembered the last time Loretta cried, begging for forgiveness over something she did to Elias. He forgave her. She did it again. That taught me something. Forgiveness without consequence is just an invitation for repeat offense. Silence wasn't passive anymore. It was a choice. Later that day, I called Mira, the housekeeper who'd known us since we were kids. She picked up on the second ring. Delphi, she said, cautiously. I asked if we could meet, if she still had any of the boxes or papers she'd once tucked away during the estate clearing. She paused. Then she whispered, "You still remember the library?" I did. She said, "I never forgot what I saw the night they tore pages from your journal." My stomach flipped. We agreed to meet the next afternoon at the Franklin house. The drive there was heavy. Gray skies, familiar bends in the road. The kind that remind you of who you used to be and who they told you you were. The house looked tired. Shutters faded, grass grown long in patches. Mira opened the door quietly, her eyes soft, her steps even softer. She led me straight to the library. There, beneath the bench seat, she pulled out a weathered lockbox. "I shouldn't have kept this," she murmured. "But I knew someday you'd come back asking." Inside were old diaries, receipts, and a folder labeled Estate Delta Survey. My throat tightened. I flipped it open. There it was, my sketches, my notes, my signature, dated, detailed, unmistakably mine. And beside it a newer version. Updated survey. But the signature wasn't mine. Not the real one. Mira sat quietly, watching. Then she spoke. "I saw Logan that night. He carried those big black binders. He told me not to worry about it." She looked at me. I knew something wasn't right. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I sat there, letting the betrayal seep in. They hadn't just taken papers. They'd taken authorship. Identity. Voice. But the house, this dusty, wounded place, was mine in spirit. Always had been. I stood and looked at Mira. "You didn't owe me this," I told her. "But thank you." She nodded once. That evening, back at my condo, I sat on the couch with the documents spread out. I took a photo of a small portion, just enough to stay legal, just enough to be clear. I posted it on my social page, no caption. Just the image. My story didn't need flair. It needed sunlight. Maybe silence protected them before. But I wouldn't protect their lies anymore. I closed the laptop and stepped away. The lines were drawn now. It was nearly midnight when I picked up my phone again. One new comment under my post. "Your mother just texted me, stop spreading lies." I held the Cross Townsend pen that had sat on my desk for years. A gift from Dad when I was 13. I remember what he said when he gave it, "Put your name on things that matter." Now, I finally was. This war just moved into the open. I walked into my condo that morning to find a thick envelope waiting on the kitchen counter. It was heavier than a bill or a card. I held it in my hands, distant until I peeled open the flap. Notice of filing, real property fraud. The letters stared back at me. I sank into the chair, chest tightening. They filed their case without fanfare. Quietly. Hide it from view. But not from me. They couldn't bury truth now, not when my silence was their undoing. My first appointment was at a small boutique law firm downtown. The waiting room smelled like old books and leather. Ms. Crane greeted me with a nod. She invited me into her office. At her desk she laid out strategies: quiet title action, voidable conveyance, rescission rights. I asked about liability, countersuits, defamation risks. She paused. Logan might file emotional harm claims. Be careful how you frame your public statements. She told me we could file quietly, build a case, and only go public when the evidence was beyond contest. I left that office feeling the weight of escalation. This was no longer a dispute. It was war by law. Back in my living room, I sorted my binder. Beneath sketches and signed drafts lay one folded letter. I unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakable. Cale. From years ago. He warned Loretta in those lines, "Don't silence her forever." I read it twice, the edges of memory fraying. He knew. He knew long ago. This was never blind love. This was watching and waiting. Realization hit me in waves. He wasn't just a lover. He was a keeper of truths in a house built on lies. I forwarded the letter and an evidence summary to Ms. Crane. Then I paused. She was assembling the motion. I asked, "Do we go public now?" She looked at me with measured calm. "We'll file first. Then time the release. Let them stumble." She nodded to the PR firm I'd hired. They'd craft a short statement. I sued because silence betrayed me. Email templates ready, queued. I watched Logan's post earlier, the same boast, the same smug foreground of ownership. I felt the shift. This is chess, not a scream. Night came slow. In the dark of my condo, the weight of solitude pressed heavy. At my desk, I rifled through old drafts of design plans, elevation sketches, dated notes. My fingers paused on the cross-Townsend pen my father gave me. That thing had written my dreams. It would write my fight. Doubts tickled my mind, smear campaigns, public breaking. But I braced myself. I journaled in quiet. I used to pray for them to see me. Now I pray for strength to see myself. Then I tucked the journal away. I wouldn't respond to provocations. I would act. My phone pinged. The notification read, "Filing accepted, real property fraud case $2,231 Hong Kong dollars." My heart exhaled. The silent lawsuit was live. They can't erase me anymore. I woke to my phone buzzing nonstop. Headlines glowed across the screen, "Deed reinstated to Delphi." My name in bold. My property legally returned. The shock punched me silent. Social media exploded, Logan's face twisted in fury, commentary flooding in from every corner of Franklin and Houston. I sipped cold coffee, hands trembling. A memory, signing that survey so casually, flashed bright. It had all been carefully built. The mask was cracking. I authorized a press release, proof of the rightful deed, evidence attached. Within minutes, media contacts texted enthusiastic support. The family chat exploded, accusations, denials, gaslighting. "She forged, this is ridiculous, we never meant to shut her out." They fought. I watched from quiet distance. Let them unravel. I already rebuilt from nothing. Elias texted, I knew. I stared, finger hovering for a reply, then deleted it. Still on the lunchroom steps at the Franklin property, I demanded every tie be cut. Financial support. Titles. Contact. I sent emails to Loretta and Raymond, "Don't call me daughter. Don't call me heir." I watched the read receipts grow red. No reply. It felt punitive. Healing. I realized titles were chains. I refused to wear them anymore. Then the backlash came fast. Logan's lawyer fired off a cease and desist, "Stop defaming us publicly." Loretta posted a statement claiming I was tearing the family apart. Local neighbors posted divided opinions on Facebook. Old friends messaged me, awkward and nervous. I braced for the smear campaign. But I'd expected this. I'd prepared. Night came. I sat in my living room, lights low. The weight of solitude pressed in, but not as Pierce. I asked myself, had I gone too far? Memories flickered, times I begged for just a nod, an acknowledgement. But the voice in me whispered, you deserve truth, not half measures. I clutched Dad's old cross-Townsend pen. I felt its weight in my hand, felt heritage and strength. I resolved, no more hiding. No more half-lies. Then my phone buzzed. An anonymous tip, someone found video evidence showing Logan forging documents. I froze. It wasn't confirmed. But I believed it. The next move would expose more than deeds. I didn't start this war, but I will finish it. Ngoi Kui, Nu Chin. Van Phong Doi Tuk, Kong Van Hoa, Kong Then Van. Kong Dung Canvas/block quote. Lean Mok, Kong Chia Fan, Kong Ghi Nan Outline. Ju Continuity 2 Chapter 7. Viet Day Du Noi Dung Ung Voi Tung Muc Trong Don Y, almost equals 3.900 KY2. Chao Treo Man, Kich Ban Fan Phui Song Kai Trong Bui Luncheon. Truoc Kai Tua Bat Dao Viet Chapter 8, Tua Kan Lam Ro Mot Du Quan Trong De Kong Sai Continuity, V Chapter 8 La Chuang Chao Treo Quiet Din, Mwachi Tit Phi Chin Zak Tuet Doi. Magnifying glass tilted left CAUHOI XAC Nan Due Not, Lin Quan Chat CHE Den Chi Tit Chuang 8. Trong Kak Chapter Truoc, 1 Den 7, Nan Vat Nu Chin De Tung Truck Tit Fat Song Kai Video Hoke Bang Chung Truoc Song Chung Chua? A. Chua Tung Song Kai, Chi Dung O Vik Chuan Bai Va Hin Ton Viu Kien Im Lang. B. De Tung Ramot Fan Bang Chung Tren Ming Xa Hoi, and Hung Chua Tring Chu Video He Doi Daud Song Kai. Tua Phi Zak Nan Chi Tit Nai De Dam Bao Chapter 8 Kong Lap Sai. Nu A, Chapter 8 Se La Lan Dao Tien Su That No Tung Truoc Song Chung. Nu B, Chapter 8 Se La Cap Du Chao Han, Kong Duoc Koi Nu Lan Dao Boc Tran. No entry Tua Kong Hoi Lai Vi Thu Thong Tin, Tua Hoi De Tran 6 Fam Continuity. Chi Kan Ban Tra Loi A Hope B, Tua Se Viet Chapter 8 Hon Chen Nai Lap Tuc, Kong Dung, Kong Hoi Them. Chi Kan Tra Loi. A. Chuad Song Kai Bang Chung Bao Gio. B. De Tung Bang Chung Mot Fan Truoc Song Chung. Backhand index pointing right Sao Ka Tra Loi Qua Ban, Tua Se Lap Tuc Bat Dao Chapter 8. I arrived at the mountain cabin just before sunset. The air was cold, crisp, clean in a way Houston never was. Pine needles brushed the windows. I parked the car and unlocked the door, carrying only a suitcase and the Cross Townsend pen. Inside, nothing but silence and wood walls. I sat at the table, pulled out an old letter from Elias. I read it slowly, tracing familiar handwriting. Lines that once stung now felt like echoes of a chapter already closed. Pain was there, but dulled. I took out my journal, pen trembling, and wrote. Not about them. About me. I spent the next hours unpacking bits of my life. Old photos fell out, just me, my first book cover, that speech in a college auditorium, the check for my first client. I didn't try to see family in every frame. I recognized my own ascent. I didn't cry. I smiled. I mapped out a life I built from nothing, on my own terms. I realized I had given them too much narrative power for too long. They don't owe me closure. I do. Late in the afternoon, my phone pinged. Loretta left a voicemail, formal, cold apology. Logan's attorney followed with a settlement offer and suggestion for a joint statement. I pressed my thumb to my lips. I felt the weight of saying something. But I didn't. I deleted both messages. I whispered into empty air, I'm free. Forgiveness isn't always reconciliation. I didn't owe them a response. Evening settled in. I left the cabin and walked up a quiet path to a small clearing. I sketched on a notebook ideas for a nonprofit, a scholarship fund in my name. I drove into the nearest town, filed the paperwork myself, no press, no fanfare. No eyes watching. Just purpose. A retired couple in the local diner told me, "You've got the soul of someone who didn't give up." Their kindness was home. That's the family I chose, friends, mentors, people who saw me. Back at the cabin, I sat by the fireplace. I wrote a long letter to my 17-year-old self, you were never invisible. You were surrounded by the wrong mirrors. I described what I survived, the mansion, the battle, the truth I reached. I scribbled, "They saw the mansion." But I boarded the plane. I folded the paper and watched it burn, the flame dancing. Smoke curled upward. My grief flickered and then stilled. Night pressed heavy. I sat drinking tea, listening to the fire crackle. Then came a sharp knock at the door. My heart jumped. I opened it slowly. Mira stood there, face drawn, eyes glistening. "You were right all along," she said. "I left too late. But I'm here now." Her presence was the remnant of those walls crumbling behind me. In the silent dark, I nodded. I wasn't the same girl who begged to be seen. I was someone else now.